Everyone, welcome back. Today we're looking at Ghana's new railway line. Now, this is very impressive for Ghana. Ghana has been making some impressive infrastructure development as of late. Now, Ghana is not a country that we often speak about, but it's one of my favorite countries out there. And as a nation, Ghana do struggle with a lot of things. Even now, however, I can honestly say they're one of those African countries that understand that infrastructure development is key. So I'm really glad to see the introduction of these new railway line. But even more impressive for the country of Ghana, I'm more impressed that Ghana probably has some of the best trains, if not the best trains in Africa. Now, these trains were not built in Africa. However, these trains are operating in Africa, and that's really, really impressive. You can clearly see that the country has come a long way. And admittedly, there's still a long way to go, but you have to offer a round of applause for Ghana and their infrastructure development. They understand that it's very important. And I think this is one of the reasons why in West Africa, Ghana is really doing exceptionally well in business capitalization. In terms of business development, Ghana has been booming in recent years, and this has seen a positive influx of people coming into the country to work. It's also seen a positive influx of the people within the countries being offered more jobs. However, there's still criticism that there is still not enough jobs going around, especially for the youth. And I do think this is a very important point that the government need to identify and they need to improve. Because Africa as a whole, they have the youngest population in the world. I believe the median age in Africa, on a global scale in Africa, is perhaps between 18 to 19 years old. So these are very youthful countries. And if you don't invest in your youth, you're not going to have great leadership in the future to come. So countries like Ghana, countries like South Africa need to stop thinking about just today. It's not about just living for today. You have to think about tomorrow and the day after and 10 years from now. And then 30 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now. That's what you have to keep in mind, the bigger picture. So these infrastructure development do show positive signs that they're thinking more widely and more broadly about the future. But there are still some challenges, and of course, we will see how they handle those. Akufo-Addo commissioned Tema-Mpakadan standard gauge railway line and the diesel multiple unit trains. For a moment, let's just appreciate the fact that Ghana has these incredible locomotive running around the Ghana country. This is phenomenal, I must say. This is a ceremony that they were keeping of these moving locomotive. It's really, really good for the country's development, and it's much needed. Transportation is key. When it comes to infrastructure development, transportation is key. The need of travel between different areas of the country is paramount. And I'm so glad that the government is developing these platforms to offer the citizens more accessibility rather than just having an option to buy a car. Because that's not a viable option for everyone. Buying a car, maintaining a car, it's very expensive. If you're making really good money, maybe you're middle class, even if you're lower middle class and upper class in terms of income annually, you can perhaps afford a vehicle. But for everyone who's on a median income, for everyone who's on a lower income, well, they need the government to help them in terms of transportation. So bus services needs to be improved. And this is not just something for Ghana, but this is something for the entirety of Africa to be considered. Transportation such as trains does need to be improved, and I'm glad to see these improvements are happening in Ghana. They're much needed, and I can definitely say for sure that the people will be most grateful for these infrastructure development, because these are some of the most advanced locomotives to set foot on the African continent, and this is brilliant. Perhaps one of my favorite parts is seeing the interior of these locomotives. It's really impressive to see how far these countries have come. And with the investments that are being promoted within these countries, they're able to invest in proper infrastructure. The citizens have worked very hard and paid their taxes, and they deserve trains of these standards. So I'm glad to see it being introduced in Ghana more and more often. With these new train lines, they're adding more and more expansion. Now, this is even more important for Ghana than you could ever imagine. Now, these are the new rail lines that are being added in Ghana. Like I said, it is really, really good to see. Take a moment to appreciate the location that these new train lines are being added to. The location is very, very important to consider because this infrastructure development would drive trades. So if you can see in this image right here, you can notice that in the left-hand side, there are containers. On the right hand side, there's an ocean. On the next image, you can see Accra on the left and you can see Aflal. I believe I pronounced that incorrectly. I do apologize, but you can see that on the right hand side. So these new train lines are able to provide trade throughout various different parts of Ghana. Now, if we take a closer look, what do we notice here? Now, this is where the new train line has been developed. Now, what do you see in the surrounding area? Well, for one, we do have a port. We have a port, a very, very large port, and that's very interesting. And it's not easy to build ports in Africa. The simple reason why is that because in Africa, there's a lot of low land towards the ocean. The land is very low, which means that the water is not deep enough. In order for major ships to be ported, the water isn't deep enough. So in order to build ports where there are deeper water, you have to sort of manufacture a basin around the island itself. So if you look right here, you can see there's very shallow waters. Very shallow waters. It's very difficult to build ports there. But not too far out, the water gets pretty deep. So you can build an artificial port. Not a natural port, but an artificial port. And this is what you get with these ports. And this port is very big. It has various different terminals. And the key thing with these ports is that not everything is good to be transported by just vehicles, trucks. In order to transport goods more efficiently via these ports, you need a combination of trucks, of course, but also trains. So this is what I mean when I say these new railway lines will add so much benefit to Ghana, because this will certainly improve the access to goods via this port. And this is perhaps one of Ghana's most major ports, so it's very important. It's very close to Accra, of course. Now, one additional thing, you can obviously see the new railway lines right around there, but if you go a little bit further down, closer to where the containers are, you can see these new platforms, but it sort of ends. It sort of ends around here where the port is. Now, this is perfect for transportation, to be honest. But if they wanted to expand this towards Accra, they can always do that in the future. It wouldn't be cheap, it would not be easy, because the thing is that it would probably interfere with the infrastructure that they have around this area. Now you can see that they already have lines that go that direction. So they already have lines that go into the direction of Accra, but these I believe are a little bit older. So if they wanted to develop these a little bit further, they could. That is the really important point to mention, and it runs along the highway, of course.